Today we're talking about things that most truck drivers won't do. We're talking about driving into New York. Stick around. We'll be right back with that story. Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about driving into New York in the 1990s. So this is before GPS and cell phones and those types of things, and it was a lot more challenging. As you know, the story's kind of gone along here. Got my CDL license, had a job running team. Didn't run team any longer for the first 3 months because, as I said, the cab of a truck isn't big enough for two men's egos. Got a job working for an American company, Burlington Motor Carriers, and running short haul, so basically picking the loads up in Toronto, clearing customs, and then taking them down for the American drivers. So that was my second job, and my third job was working for a personnel agency. As I said, for those of you truck drivers who might be up for a bit of a challenge, working for a personnel agency might be something that you want to do, especially if they have customers that are carriers rather that do LTL freight, less than load, which is basically, 6, 10, 15 drops on a trailer, depending on what kind of freight they're hauling. And for us, when I was working for MacArthur Express and hauling for steel case furniture, it wasn't uncommon for loads to have 12 drops on it. And the runs that I did to New York City, that was a lot of what I did. I would get down there Sunday night, deliver all day Monday. You had 6 drops on a trailer, finish delivering on Tuesday, and then drive back for Wednesday and pick up another load and go down Thursday, Friday. That was my run for 6 months, and after 6 months, I'll tell you, I was pretty beat up running the city of New York. Colin, I feel like I should coach at a police academy and show officers how to drive and clear intersections. There you go. Teach officers how to drive. Michael is here. Colin is here. Farron is here. 380 is here, my friend. And Carrie is tuning in from Minnesota. So if you're just tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from. This is day 7 of the storytelling on lockdown here in British Columbia. That's where I am. And today we have a bonus for you at the end of the video, or the end of the live stream. So stick around for that. I don't know whether you any of you are doing YouTube channels or those types of things. Leave us a comment down in the comment section, or leave us a comment here while you're on the live stream. I was watching TubeBuddy's 24-hour quarantine stream. It was good fun. I think they had a lot of fun. I know Andrew Can was pretty tired this morning after 24 hours of live streaming, which was pretty cool. Colin, YYC. What is YYC? Is that New York City Airport? So today I want to talk about some specific information about driving truck in the U.S. that I think will really help you out. Especially for those of you who aren't really familiar with the eastern seaboard of the U.S., or what's called New England, which is refers to the 13 original states in the U.S. The 13 original states that, when the United States was founded at the end of the 18th century, due to the American Revolution, those states that made up the original United States of America, the 13 states, and that's what the 13 stripes are on the American flag. New York City tends to be a bit of a, it's a huge city, 8.5 million people, and I don't know whether 8.5 million people includes all of the boroughs. So there's 5 boroughs. They call them boroughs, which are basically suburbs of New York. Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island. And did I miss one? Let me know if I missed one there. 380 set into your pre-trip seminar. What luck. Everything is to shut down now. YCC is Calgary Airport. Oh, there we go. Okay, excellent. Taryn is here. Colin says he has 2 YouTube channels. Go check out Aviation Calgary and YWES, and double YC is Calgary. Yes, there we go. Excellent. So, the first thing about the Eastern Seaboard in and around New York City is everything is toll roads. Everything is toll roads. I-90, which runs east-west, and it runs east-west to Massachusetts, and then it turns south to New York City, is a toll road. The Boston Turnpike is a toll road. The New Jersey Turnpike is a toll road, and most of the bridges and tunnels going onto the island of Manhattan, you couldn't go into the tunnels with a truck. Know that if you're running New York City, because they're only 12 feet 6 inches high. If you're running a flat deck, I did meet a couple of drivers down there when I was delivering once or twice in New York City, in Manhattan, lower Manhattan, down near Where's the bull? It's escaping me. Wall Street. Down near Wall Street, we were delivering office furniture down near Wall Street at one point and met another driver. He was actually running a flat deck, and he had actually come through the tunnel because the stacks on his truck were actually less than 12.6. But because I was running a road tractor, the stacks on my truck were more than 12.6, so 13.6 is the maximum height you can have on a commercial vehicle. So I had to go across the bridges, and most of the time there was kind of two options to get into Manhattan with a tractor trailer. You either came from the north and you went across the George Washington Bridge. And at the time that I was driving in the 1990s, and maybe somebody on the live stream or somebody on the replay can confirm this, when I was driving in the 1990s, it was $20 to go across the George Washington Bridge with a tractor trailer. Now I've heard as much as $100 to go across the George Washington Bridge with a tractor trailer. The other way into Manhattan was to come from New Jersey across the Verrazano and Tappan Zee Bridge, across to Staten Island, across the other bridge, and then into Brooklyn, and come up Brooklyn, the BQE, and then go across. Like Farron, my battery is low whenever I'm on a live stream. On your phone, is that what it is? Yeah, it usually happens to me. 380 says that boroughs in New York City are they're neighborhoods, which is exactly what they are. So ran into New York City. When we came from Ontario, though, we usually went down, made our way through Buffalo in sort of the back roads, and then we went across on 17. 17 is a state road that runs east-west across the state of New York, and most of it's 4-lane. It's not an interstate per se. There are a few places along interstate or highways, State Road 17, that do have conventional kind of cities and intersections and those types of things, and kind of slows you down a little bit. However, you're not paying the toll, because the toll on I-90 is fairly expensive, and it's not the fastest route either to get to New York City. And from where we were driving, it was about 8 hours to get down there. And the other interesting thing, and I have a video about this on the channel here about navigation in the United States on interstates and those types of things. And odd-numbered interstates in the U.S. Run north-south. Even-numbered interstates run east-west. And the mile markers line up with the exit numbers in the United States. And in New York City, I-90 is one of the exit numbers. The exit numbers don't line up with the mile markers. It's one of the oddities about New York City and New York State. So the other thing about New York City and New York State is you can't turn right on a red light in Manhattan and the 5 boroughs. That's the other thing that's odd about New York State. And then finally, 380, it was $60 for a tandem box truck. I'm sure there's a toll taker on that bridge who isn't too... doesn't want to have me back. Did you do something wrong, 380, or were you kind of astounded by how much it costs to go down to the States and run the toll roads there in and around New York City? So the other thing, and the last piece that's different about the state of New York as opposed to the rest of the United States of America when driving a truck, is that the maximum height in the United States is 13 feet 6 inches, 4.15 meters, as it is here in Canada. And in New York State, I mean, most of the states, when they measure for heights, bridge heights, overhead obstructions, and those types of things, they measure from the ground to the top of the unit. But not New York State and not New York City. They measure from the center of the hub to the top of the truck. So even, and I don't think they've really fixed this problem today. I did some research on this a year or so ago. It's still the same issue that they're having, that they're measuring from the center of the hub to the top of the truck. So 12 feet 6 inches. So you're losing a foot. And you can go under bridges that are 12 feet 6 inches. So you're running up the BQE and it's saying the bridge 12.8, 12.10. And you kind of got your heart in your throat the first couple of times you're doing that, because you're thinking, I'm going to rip the top of the truck off. And we had a couple of guys do that while I was working for MacArthur Express. So, that's a bit daunting. One of the other times I was down in New York State, I was making a delivery, go around the corner, and I get up to a bridge, and the bridge says 12 foot 7 inches, and I just stopped in morning rush hour, and the traffic's backed up behind me. They're honking, and I'm kind of looking at it going, can I get under there? And I'm like Finally, some nice citizen got out of their car, come up, and he says to me, he says, "You can go under that." He says, "Trucks go under it all the time." I said, "Okay." And if that happens, if you're in a tractor trailer unit and you're going under a bridge and you're not sure whether you're going to be able to clear it or not, go very slowly so you're going to minimize the damage. And I mean, you can go on and look at low bridges and overpasses that are taking out trucks all the time here on YouTube and whatnot. So it happens all the time. 380, quite a toll. They said $20 for twin axle. I had two. They didn't mention weight. Yeah, it usually goes by axles. Farron, it's very nice here. It's lovely spring. It's probably going to go up to 20 degrees Celsius here and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's really nice. 380, they have not. I read that if it's a yellow sign, it's a foot short. It is white. It's really that height. Clinchy. Yeah, for sure, 380. And, it makes it very challenging. Not to mention if you drive truck into the city of New York, or the city of Chicago in Illinois, the city of Chicago has 2,500 low bridges and overpasses. So, use your eyes, read the sign, know that, you may not be able to go under it. And story about that, when I was driving, I was in Boston, and I had a load of furniture on for schools. And so they had some teenage kids who were helping unload the freight, and the woman who was in charge of where the furniture was going and those types of things, I don't know what her role was. Probably, logistics and support for the school board and whatnot. So one of the young kids was helping me unload the truck, or pull the freight, chairs and whatnot back to the back of the trailer so they could unload it and take it into the school. And the woman said to me, she said, "Well, we got to go to a couple of different schools and and you can just follow me and I'll just drive my car there." And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm telling the kid, I said, "Listen, if you're in the car and the bridge or overpass says less than 13 feet 6 inches, I said, I can't go under there with the truck." And so we were singing a little song so they could remember that it had to be 13 feet 6 inches for me to be able to get under there with the truck, so I didn't take the front of the truck off. We're singing a little song. Oh, it has to be 13 feet 6 inches, 13 feet 6 inches, or we can't get under. We're singing the song, and finally, he clued in. He was very clever, this young kid that was working with me. And funny enough, just as we're finishing unloading at the first school, this truck goes by on a wrecker. It's being towed, and the front of the trailer's all bashed in. And this young kid, he looks at me, kind of gives me a look, and he says, "I guess he didn't know his truck was 13 feet 6 inches." Of course, I was right in stitches because the young kid completely got what I was saying to him and whatnot. Anyway, we went around Boston. We delivered to the other two schools, and everything was fine. And it was fairly challenging driving in and around New York City, because there were some places where you would make the turn, go under a bridge, and in order to actually, the bridge was a curve. It wasn't like one bridge and a span that went across, but it was those curvatures underneath, and you had to stay to the center of the bridge to be able to get the truck underneath the bridge, because if you stayed to either side on the pillars, you would take the top of the truck off. And so that was one of the most difficult things. Also, which bridges you could go over in Manhattan and New York City to be able to get to Manhattan and get out to Queens and the Bronx and those types of things. 380 says, release the 13 feet 6 song as a single. Yeah. Farron, you just saw the 100,000 trophy. Yes, it's over there. Yeah, we did that last year, but it's going to be a while before we get another one. Oh, and Carrie says they're having snow in Minnesota. Yeah. So the other piece about driving in New York, I was doing a lot of deliveries into Queens, and you have to get back onto Manhattan and most of the time when you go from Queens, there's a couple of ways you can go, and a lot of times because as I said, I was delivering LTL freight, so I would deliver in Queens, and then I would usually be run up to Connecticut, into Boston, and those types of places, into Massachusetts, and I would have to do more drops. And the way that you go north to get out of Queens, you run across into Manhattan, and then you go north, you come across the George Washington Bridge, or there's another bridge north of that, which I can't recall its name, to get up and head up into Connecticut. one time I'm coming out of Queens and I'm like, there's the 59th Street Bridge. I didn't know whether trucks were allowed on the 59th Street Bridge. And I remember sitting at the intersection looking, and I could see the bridge from where I was at the intersection in Queens. And I'm looking at the bridge and I'm trying to see whether there's other trucks going across the bridge, because there weren't any signs that said no trucks or those types of things. And I'm trying to figure it out. And finally I'm just like, yeah, I'm going. And, you know, I didn't have much weight on the truck anyway, because we were pulling office furniture, and office furniture is not very heavy. I mean, the most that you ever end up on a truck is 20,000 pounds. So the truck's only running out about 40,000 pounds, half of what the legal weight is on a tractor trailer unit. And so I get up on the 59th Street Bridge, going across the bridge, and all of a sudden I see the exit for Manhattan for, I believe it was First Ave, and I just crank the wheel over, get down off the exit, and I get down to the bottom of the exit. 380 says it's the Verrazano. I'm not sure. It might be the Verrazano 380, but I think the Verrazano goes across to Staten Island. Anyway, going across the 59th Street Bridge, get off the exit, and at the end of the exit, I couldn't turn right, which is the direction that I had to go, because I had to go north up Manhattan. And so I had to go right over to the other side of the road and drive up on the sidewalk to get the truck and trailer around to get onto the road. And so I'm on the sidewalk on the other side of the road, you know, going really slowly. I'm trying to look on the other side, because this is, you know, the passenger side of the truck and trailer is the blind side of the truck. And I'm going very slowly. I'm looking, making sure the trailer's coming around. I'm not really hitting anything. I'm right up on the sidewalk. And this little woman on, you know, she's got the big beige wool jacket on, and she's got the scarf covering her head, and she's got a walker, and she's on the sidewalk. And I just, you know, I saw her coming, and I just kind of stopped the truck, and she just walks up. She's got her head down with the walker, and she kind of looks up, and she sees the front of the truck. And I just stopped, and I kind of waved to her a little bit, and it didn't even faze her one iota that I was on the sidewalk with the truck. She just moves the walker over to the right, and she just carries on around me and carries on, and I just waited till she got past me, and then I just carried on with where I was going. And you know, that was common driving on sidewalks in New York State and Boston and other places. You know, trying to get around the city. You know, like I said, driving in Manhattan was fairly easy. Queens was a bit more difficult. Brooklyn wasn't too bad. You know, and as I said, kind of in the introduction, a lot of drivers will not drive into New York City. And the reason that I drove into New York City is because as soon as I went across the bridge, across the George Washington Bridge, I got a $150 a day bonus. So I'm like, why wouldn't I drive into New York City? And you know, a lot of drivers will tell you, there's all kinds of rumors in the industry, and drivers will tell you all the time, oh, I got mugged in New York City, I got robbed, this and that, and blah blah blah. I ran into New York City for 6 months and never had a problem. I slept in Brooklyn, I slept in Manhattan, pulled over to the side of the road. I had times I was so exhausted that I just pull over, lock the doors, and sleep in the truck. My personal theory about truck drivers that ran into New York City or any other metropolitan city and got into trouble, you know, they were looking for women, they were looking for, you know, prostitutes, they were drugs or whatever it was. You know, that's just my theory. But my theory is that if you're looking for bad things are going to happen to you. You know, nothing ever happened to me. I mean, I did get lost a couple of times. I got lost in Brooklyn once, you know, trying to get back up on the BQE, the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, which is, for the most part, when it runs through Brooklyn, is an elevated highway. It's on stilts. And the other interesting thing about trying to find your way through Brooklyn in the daytime when it's busy, because we had one place that we delivered to down there that was an office, you know, it was like a warehouse, and then they would split up the office furniture and take it out and deliver it and install it and those types of things. Where the warehouse was is that you would go down the road, and it was one-way streets, and it was up and down and up and down. And because most of the businesses in Brooklyn don't have enough room to run their business, whether it's a recycling plant for newspaper and those types of things, or it's a you know, it's a mechanic shop or a lumber shop or whatever it is, these businesses spill out onto the road, and they literally block the roads in these industrial areas in Brooklyn. And I can remember coming out of the warehouse after I delivered and trying to figure out how to get up to the other street that I needed north, and I'm going down the street and I'm looking up the street to see whether the street's blocked or not, because most of them were blocked and you couldn't get a tractor trailer up there, and looking, and it's blocked, looking, it's blocked, going to the next one and the next one and the next one, and just until you finally find one that's not blocked. I mean, these obviously were some of the challenges of driving in and around New York City and the boroughs, is just the sheer volume of traffic and the sheer number of people who are trying to work in a very limited space in New York City. But and as I said, 380 doesn't bulldozing little old ladies does not gain you any friends and safety, not to mention bad PR. Yeah, and so. And New York City, I mean, it was a great place. And I mean, we think of New York City. I mean, unfortunately right now, New York City, Manhattan is the hub of the coronavirus in the United States right now. But, it's a great, the city is an awesome place. I mean, it's, Broadway, Fifth Avenue, theater, all those types of things. And I mean, I drove all of these places and, delivered furniture right downtown at night with a delivery with a crew pulling off freight off the back of the truck and those types of things. And I can remember one guy was there and was chatting him up, and he'd driven into Manhattan and he had to park his car for 2 hours. He paid for parking for 2 hours, and he said it was $50 to park his car for 2 hours. He said this is why everybody, when you see them in the movies and those types of things, they take taxi cabs. They take taxi cabs because it's so expensive to park your vehicle in the city. It's just crazy. So, Wheelman, g'day, friend. Been driving for a while, haven't caught that virus. Really dislike these single drive axle trucks. Tandem drives are much more pleasing. Yes, there's something about single axle trucks that they're just not as... There's something wrong with them. It's like 48-foot trailers. They just don't look right on the back of a truck anymore. There seems to be a bit of it missing. Brian, talked to road safety another 2 weeks to get my file. That's unfortunate. Sorry to hear about that. Okay, so those are some stories about driving in New York City and trying to deliver and those types of things. And as I said, all of this was very challenging because it was before the time of GPS, and you're basically working on calling these companies and getting directions into where you need to go. And you're driving into New York, into Manhattan, out to Long Island, into Brooklyn, Queens, those types of places, and back out to Jersey. So you cross the bridges and those types of things. And it seemed really expensive for me in the 1990s. I mean, it's probably 3 or 4 times that amount for tolls as it was in the 1990s. In the 1990s, tolls were it was anywhere between $120 and $130 for every time you went down there and drove around on the toll roads with the truck. And I mean, they did give you a float. I mean, somebody asked me that question a couple of live streams ago about whether drivers pay for the fuel. No, drivers don't pay for the fuel. And when you work as a driver for a company, the company also pays the toll, for the tolls for the truck. And the company will either give you a credit card or they'll just, when we were driving, they just gave us a float. So we had, $200 in American money that we carried with us to pay for the tolls and those types of things when we were running in that area. And, if anything had to be fixed on the truck or those types of things, we took it out and then just handed receipts back in, and then they would top up our float every time we came back. So that's how that worked in terms of driving into New York City. Wheelman, by the way, did you ever see Sigourney Weaver in New York? No, can't say I did. Ross, why is California different for trailer axle placement than many other U.S. states and Canada? Ross, California isn't different. It is the same. It's just, for whatever reason, they seem to enforce it more. And what Ross is talking about is they're talking about bridge law. Bridges are designed to carry a certain amount of weight per linear foot of the bridge. And they're very strict about from where the trailer hooks onto the truck at what's called the kingpin. that comes down on the trailer from the kingpin to the center of the axles on the semi-trailer has to be 41 feet, and that's called a bridge law. It's for so much weight per cubic or per square foot on bridges. That's the way they deal with it, because that's the way that bridges are engineered. California tends to enforce a lot of its laws, its environmental laws, its bridge laws, and those types of things more so than other states and provinces. Interesting enough, in 2016 when I went back driving, I was coming back from Calgary, came through Golden, British Columbia here, and got pulled into the scale. And I had a 53-foot trailer, and the tandems were slid almost all the way to the back. And I got pulled in. So I come in, and the scale master, Quebecois woman, starts having a go at me about why the axles were slid back. And I said, well, it's empty. I said, there's no big deal. She said, oh, it's, there's a law, 41 feet, so you can get around corners and those types of things. And I said, no, that's not what it is at all. And she just had a go at me, and I realized that I should just be quiet and do as she asked, which she asked me to slide them back up to the 41-foot point, which I did. And also I learned in 2016 that when you slide the tandems to have your axle weights within compliance, and I mentioned this the other day about in the United States, which is the easiest, it's 80,000 pounds overall on the truck, and you're allowed 12,000 on the steer axles, and then 34,000 on the two tandem axles. And the other thing that I learned is that most of the time when you were trying to work out the axle weights on a big truck, you're sliding the trailer tires, right there, and you pull the pin, they slide, you put the brakes on and then slide them either forward or backwards. So if you want more weight on the trailer, you move the wheels forward. If you want more weight on the truck, then you move the wheels back. And I can remember doing that in the 1990s, and you're trying to pull this pin out to unlock the pins on the rack underneath, and just pulling your guts out trying to reef that stupid pin out. And in 2016 when I did it, I realized they now had air pistons on them, and you just go out and pull a button and then slide the axles and go back and push the button, and it was like super easy. And I was like, oh, I love technology. Technology is awesome. So this is another thing that happened, that transitioned in the industry for sliding axles and those types of things. And I need to make a video on that on weight compliance. 380 Tappan Zee Bridge on I-87 throughout is next after GW. So there you go. It's the Tappan Zee Bridge, which is the one in the north. The next one north from the George Washington Bridge. Janet, not sure if it's the true name, but here in Ontario we call them Michigan trailers. Is that simply because Michigan is known for checking overloads so much? Janet, when you're saying Michigan trailers, what do you mean by Michigan trailers? Are you talking about the axles that slide? Because I've never heard that before in terms of Michigan trailers. Epic, if you're paying by cash, this was before Easy Pass. A semi-trailer will cost you $50 to $100 if you have extra axles. New York City bridges. For some companies that work in New York City, trucks, COE trucks is their choice. Okay. So yeah, I guess it depends on the number of axles. They're going to charge you by the number of axles for going over bridges. 380, what I never get are the strange trailers like triaxle van trailers in Ontario and like 10-axle B trains in Oregon. Yeah, 380, the triaxles, the tridems, basically what it is in Canada. So on a tandem axle in Canada, you're allowed 17,000 pounds. You're allowed kilograms. So 17,000 kilograms, which is about 36,000 pounds on a tandem. And then on a triaxle, you're allowed 23,000 kilograms. Now they get these goofy things where they get, what they call them centipedes, where you get just a crazy number of axles underneath it. There's kind of, a law of diminishing returns. The more axles you put under it, the truck and trailer just get more and more heavy, and there's less weight that you could put on it overall. When I was pulling garbage into Michigan in the 1990s, we had 6-axle garbage trailers. 3 of them were lift axles, and you maxed out at 135,000 pounds, which was pretty crazy. Okay, Ross, hypothetically speaking, if you were to go back to driving in, what type of truck would you prefer driving? Reefer, flat deck, or other? Excellent question, Ross. DC, did the stream? Nope, the stream's been on for about a half an hour. DC, Ross, if I was going to go back driving truck again, I would go back hauling flat deck. That's what I would do. I would go back hauling flat deck. And the reason I would go back hauling flat deck, maybe what I'll do is I'll save that for tomorrow. I'll talk about flat decks. I'll just write that down on my sheet here. 380, but you'll, 380, but you'll never see me pulling 53 doubles on the QEW. Your cab is in Toronto and your trailer is in Hamilton. Yeah, I have to say that 253s on the back of a tractor is a lot of truck and trailer. Epic, like the driver stories of delivering in New York City area that you include Midtown Manhattan, you tend to see lift gate over ramps for delivery trucks because they take less space than a ramp. Yeah, that's for sure. A lot of these trucks in Manhattan are going to be running ramps as opposed to our lift gates, which is basically a hydraulic ramp that goes up and down on the back of the truck. That's for sure. Janet, multiple axles and all very close together so they can't axle weight you. Yeah, okay, so Janet, yep. Okay, so now I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the centipedes. Yeah, those tend to be in Oregon and Michigan. Those tend to be the two kind of odd states that have those kind of caterpillar trailers on the bottom. You know, just crazy numbers of axles. And I'm not sure what they're pulling on those things that is, like, a truck and trailer doesn't need to be more than 150,000 pounds. But I've heard of loads that are more than 150,000 pounds. For those of you who don't really know axle weights and trucks and trailers and those types of things, the average car weighs 3,000 pounds. So if you're talking a truck and trailer that weighs 150,000 pounds, let me do my math here. What's that? 300? You're talking 300 cars. 300 average cars. That's how much that truck and trailer weighs going up and down the road. It's just a crazy amount of weight. So going back to Ross's question about running flat deck, just a quick couple of points about why I would go back hauling flat deck. There's a lot more money in flat deck because you get paid for strapping, you get paid for tarping, you get paid for oversized loads and those types of things. So you make extra money doing that. And the other thing about running flat deck is most places that you pick up or deliver at, you are in the middle of their yard. You're not sitting in a loading dock, which is a space where they can put a truck and they can kind of forget about you. As they do with vans. With flat deck, you're in the middle of the yard, especially in a timber yard. So we'll use a timber yard as an example. You're in the middle of the yard. They want to get you loaded. They want to get you unloaded, whichever you're doing. And they want to get you out of the way because you're in their way. So you're going to get loaded faster. You're going to get unloaded faster. And you're going to make more money because there's extra things to do in terms of, tarping loads, strapping down loads, those types of things. And, you get a bit of exercise as well running flat deck, and like I said, you're going to make more money. Ryan, is pulling dry van or reefer, you can't make money. Pulling dry van. The thing with dry van is going to be general freight. Reefers, for those of you who may or may not know in terms of if you're not in the trucking industry, reefer is a temperature-controlled trailer. So it can either heat up the trailer or it can cool down the trailer. And it basically, on the front of the trailer is a big unit. It's a refrigeration heat unit and it's got a diesel engine on it. You also tell it a reefer trailer because it's insulated and there's a diesel fuel tank underneath the belly of the trailer as well. So 380, I'd love to see that toll bill paid by the axle in 12 weights. That's my monthly salary right now. I'm sure it is 380 in terms of that. So, so going back to driving truck in New York City, I actually found driving truck in New York City fairly easy because, as I mentioned before, Manhattan is on a grid. Most of the boroughs are on grids, which means that, it's a square city block and those types of things. It's not built like Sydney, Australia, which is kind of follows the contours of the harbor or the geography of the harbor. Or Boston. Actually, I found Boston one of the most difficult cities to drive in because, and not so much outside of the ring road, they kind of got onto the grid pattern when they were developing and building the city in Boston. But the inner city in Boston is the old colonial city, and I was in there once delivering to an office, putting office furniture in there, and driving down a road, and all of a sudden there's a building there. The road just ends at a building. With little or no warning, and then you got to get the truck out of there, which can be very intimidating. So yeah, Epic, watching from Easton, Pennsylvania. Rick, what are your thoughts on electric trucks since some big companies are ordering them for their fleets? Uh, Epic, I don't think they're going to work out. I don't think that electric trucks are going to work out for them. I think they might work out short term, but I think in the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see the decline of Tesla. That it's probably going to be taken over by another company or whatnot. But I just don't think that electric trucks are going to work, at least not in the interim, not in the next 10 or 20 years. I think there needs to be a lot of work done in terms of research and development on electric trucks and whatnot. 380 Epic, our company has a few over in California. Van can make money. Look at Purelator and FedEx. Customs, critical, urgent, valuable freight will pay. Okay, excellent. One other point that I want to make before I finish up today is running customs, getting loads across customs. Most of the time it can be a bit intimidating in terms of the amount of paperwork you have to do in terms of filling out customs paperwork, especially when you're running LTL freight into the States. And there were times when I would sit for an hour doing paperwork before I got down to the border to do paperwork. Carrie, surprised there's no sign. The other thing about I'll just leave the customs paperwork. I'll talk about that tomorrow. But just talking about signs in New York City and no truck routes. And for those of you who do drive truck, usually when you're going down a road and you want to figure out whether it's a truck route or not a truck route, and you turn onto a road, it isn't until you actually turn the corner and get around the corner that you see the no truck route sign. So you get around the corner and you're like, oh my God, there's the sign for the no truck route sign. And then you got to get off the stupid road. You got to get turned around and get back onto a road. And I had that. I was delivering in Brooklyn. Same thing. I was coming down and I'm sort of sneaking up on the intersection, and I'm looking down the road to see whether there's a sign, whether I can turn, right? So I'm like stopped in the middle of the intersection. I got my four-ways on and I'm looking down the intersection to see whether there's a no truck route sign. So I went past 3 intersections. There's a no truck route sign, no truck route sign, no truck route sign. Get down to the next road and I turn down the road, and there's the local police are all set up pulling trucks over, and I get pulled over in this as well. And all the local trucks got a ticket for being on a no truck route. And I said to the police officer, I said, listen, the reason I'm on this road is because the 3 before it all had no truck route signs on it. And I showed him my logbook, I showed him my license, I showed him my bills of lading about the address where I was going. And, they looked at my stuff, checked it over, went back to their police cruiser and those types of things. And then, they let me go, and I got to the destination where I was going to. But sometimes you have to drive down no truck route sign places to get to your delivery point. So that's the other thing about signs, in terms of, especially if you don't have a commercial GPS and those types of things. So that was it. Wheelman, our trailers are short with 3 axles, single drive axles with a max of 12,000 kilograms and a total length of 16.5 meters. Yeah, and that makes total sense for driving around Europe, because these trucks that we have here that are running out at 75 feet, 23 meters. You're just not going to get them around some of the streets that you need to get around there in Europe and Portugal and Spain and those types of places. There you go. All right, so we're just Epic about electric trucks. Even Penske rental truck has a Freightliner M2 electric truck for their fleet. Yeah, time will tell whether these things are going to work out or not. And Ross, keep them coming. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that tomorrow. So we have a bit of a bonus for you today. We're gonna leave that there. So just a minute. So as most of you know, I have 2 kids, Bern and Scout, and we are doing homeschooling because they're probably not going to go back to school until September. So every morning we get up before the live stream in the morning, and we go for a walk and we do our homeschooling. So today they're going to come on here and they're going to tell you what we learned today, and maybe everybody else will learn something too. Okay, what's this? It's a very big book. You got to look in the camera. So say hi.
Hi.
So what did we learn this morning when we went for a walk?
We learned about animals, and we learned that cow poop and other creatures on farms can make poop, and they make, like, what is it called, Daddy?
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen that
They extract nitrogen.
They extract nitrogen and makes bombs.
They used it in the First World War to make bombs when they extracted nitrogen from manure. What else what did we learn about the field this morning that didn't have any animals in it?
They had to
Let Burn talk.
They had to let the poop go into the soil so that
nitrogen,
the nitrogen go into there and become soil, the other type of the poop. And then after that...
So why weren't the horses in the field?
Because the grass had to grow.
Because what do the horses eat?
Grass.
Yes, and what kind of animals are horses? What's the category of animal?
They are herbivores.
Yes, and what kind of an animal is a herbivore?
An animal who just eats grass.
And okay, so what are the other kinds of animals?
Cows, chicken.
No, the other groups of...
Omnivore.
Yeah.
Carnivore.
There we go. So that's what we learned this morning. And it seems like we talk a lot about poop. It's funny that, the other day we didn't realize that when you put cow manure or horse poop and cow poop and chicken poop in a pile, it's called manure. So we learned about that. So that's what we learned. Why do you want to tell them about Sandpiper?
I don't know. This is Sandpiper, a place that we went.
Okay, put the book down.
And it was boring.
Yeah, it's very boring. And so I want to read the story. We made it for my dad's partner for his birthday. And
Flippin' Sandpiper, June to November.
I don't like reading that part.
Okay.
It's very boring.
All right, so basically just tell them the basic story of
No,
Sandpiper.
I want to take
No, you're not going to read the
I
book.
want to show the story.
We were trying to get money, but...
Fine, we'll just show this. We'll just show the pages.
No. You can't show the whole thing. You got to tell the story about what Sandpiper was.
We were trying to get money, but it didn't work really because like most of the government got it, and so yeah.
Anyway, Sandpiper was basically a house that a business partner and myself bought, and we renovated it. And
for the whole summer.
For the summer when the kids were out.
And it sucked.
Yeah, I don't think they're ever going to forgive me for that. So, anyway, this summer we're not renovating a house. We're back on the live stream.
It's a senior house.
All right, so we'll leave it there for today. Okay, say bye.
Bye.
Okay, there you go. All right.
I'm staying here.
No, you're not. Come on.
No.
Go. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, they're cute, and yeah, we're working on all that. So, all right. So, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. These will continue every day on lockdown, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.
I think that might help.